I'm Sally McGregor, and I'm an emeritus professor of international child health at the Institute of Child Health, University College London, and I worked in Jamaica for 30 years at the University of the West Indies before that. And I'm currently working in Bangladesh and Jamaica and Colombia and Peru. Okay, child development is critically important because the brain is developing faster at that time, and the structures are being put in place and everything in the first 5 years. And any insult at this time can have long-term effects, just like an intervention can have a long-term effect. That doesn't mean to say you can't make some changes after that, but the first few years are particularly sensitive to the environment. And also, it's fairly well established that how well a child's developed cognitively, in language development and social emotionally, when they enter school, will determine to a large extent how well they do in school. And that will have repercussions in adulthood, even the cycle of intergenerational cycle of poverty, if you like. We estimated that there were more than 200 million children in developing countries under 5 who were not reaching their potential, anything like their potential in child development. So when they arrive at school, they're not able to fully benefit from school. The main reasons for not reaching potential are partly nutritional, perhaps a little bit of health, which also causes poor nutrition, and psychosocial stimulation, or shall I say the quality of the home environment, how much stimulation is going on, what do the parents do with the child, how much they talk with the child, how much they play with the child, do they have any materials that the child can explore. And in some of these homes, in developing countries, a lot of the poor homes don't have any toys at all. They certainly don't have any books. And also, of course, the mothers may not have been educated themselves, so they're not aware of the importance of what they do with the child. They think it's all coming from God, how they develop. Well, it's very early, and we've actually measured deficits as early as 7 months, which are not enormous then, small, but they get bigger by 18 months, and by 5 years then, we're equivalent to like 15 IQ points or more on entry to school if you're comparing the poorest in the population with the wealthier population. So that will determine how well they do in school. In addition to that, they're usually going to a poorer quality school, so that the inequity is confirmed by the time they arrive in school. We have found that quite a low-cost, fairly simple intervention can have benefits. We've developed an intervention model which includes using paraprofessionals to conduct it, or just village women that have been trained and maybe just for 2 weeks trained. And they go to the homes of these children and work with the mothers for an hour a week or an hour every 2 weeks, and show them what they can do with the toys and what play activities they can do and how they can respond to the child's verbalizations and things like this. And we've done about 10 or 11 trials now in 3 different countries, in Jamaica, Bangladesh and Colombia. And in every case, the children have shown benefits. And where we've had the opportunity to follow them up, we've shown long-term benefits. And a recent study, which we followed up to 22 years of age, we've found that those now adults are better educated, their cognition is better, their IQ is higher, their mental health is better, and they're earning more money, which is what often influences the policymakers. But the ones who were intervened are actually earning 50% higher wages than the non-intervened group. But it's not just that, their social skills are better, they're less depressed, with better self-esteem. So it has had an amazing impact that's sustained as long. These children obviously need good nutrition to grow well and to be healthy, and also to develop to some extent, because a malnourished child, their development will be damaged. And severely malnourished children, most of them will have very poor development for the rest of their lives, whereas just stunted children will probably be a little worse off, maybe considerably worse off, and not just, again, it's in behaviour, it's in emotional development, it's in cognition as well. And if you feed them when they're already undernourished, they will survive and they will improve and they will grow, which is all very important. And they will improve in development for a little bit. It's unlikely to be sustainable. We don't have data showing at the moment that if they're already undernourished, that if you just feed them and you don't put in stimulation, they will not catch up to the young children. So you're missing the opportunity. I know that DFID does a lot of nutrition programs, and I congratulate them for their interest in nutrition in early childhood, and it's particularly important to stop children getting malnourished. But if you're dealing with children who are already malnourished, particularly severely malnourished, you have to put in child development activities as well, aimed at the mother rather than at the child, because it's the mother that's going to go on living with the child. So we want to empower her, if you like, with the skills and the knowledge that she can continue to do these things with the child after you're finished. But if you don't do that, it's a missed opportunity. All these nutrition programs, you're not going to solve the equity problem just by feeding children. It's necessary but not sufficient, to put it that way. I mean, it would be really good if DFID could start pioneering integrating some child development activities into their nutrition programs and begin parent education in terms of child development, not just nutrition alone. But we need to more research on what's the best way of doing this, and obviously that will vary in different situations. In some countries like Pakistan, where they have lady health visitors that go around visiting, that seems fairly straightforward. You can train them to do this as well. In other countries where they don't do home visiting, you have to think of another route, either employ more people or to start working with mothers' groups and trying out how we can do mothers' groups in a successful way, and make the clinics or the health clinics a little bit more child development friendly. I think the most important thing right now is how to go to scale with this, and part of that is integrating with health and nutrition. It doesn't have to be, it can be extending down from preschool. So the educational people could run a home visiting from preschool, and those children would then go into the preschool, so that would be quite a nice link up. They're not, I mean, cash transfer programs can add child development. Agricultural programs, I have worked with agricultural extension officers, been excellent in supervising home visiting. That was in Kenya. I think that wasn't a bad model. So if you have a breastfeeding promotion, you should put in some child development messages into that. Weaning, you should have some child development messages into that. But if you have social development programs, microfinance or anything like that, there's no reason at all why we shouldn't think of ways of putting child development messages into that. And that's the real research challenge, is how can we get the messages across, you know. Whereas in Peru, they're actually hiring a whole team of new people. I think it's that what the mother does with her child, or what the carers do with their children, will affect the child's development. They've got to get that message across first. And they should take time and play with their child and chat with their child in a way that when the child talks, they must respond. Even when it's a baby and they're vocalizing, you respond back vocally. You learn to respond to the child's interests and things. You describe the environment to the child. You go around the house and you explain the environment. You say, oh, look at the pretty picture, look at the lovely garden. Middle class people do this automatically with their children. But uneducated mothers really aren't very good. I mean, there's a lot of data showing that education goes with stimulation in the home. And that I call the quality of the environment. Look at a book with your child. I mean, they may be able to afford to buy a book, they don't know it's important. They'll buy a school book maybe, but they wouldn't buy a picture book for a child. Look at pictures with your child. And the big thing is to get this conversation going and to label the environment and to respond to the child. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it's changing the behaviour and the perception of the mothers that what they do is important. And playing pretend games with the child, that's important to child development. Adults seem to think that's child's nonsense. But you join in and, you know, if your 2-year-old comes and brings you a cup and saucer, you say, thank you, Daniel, it is nice. And even if it's made of mud or something, and you join in, participate. You know. I mean, there's masses, so you can't cover everything. It becomes more and more difficult to change. I mean, I think you can improve a child at primary school and at secondary school, improve their cognition quite a lot, but it's going to take a lot more effort and a lot more work, and for a smaller impact. But I would never say you can't. You know, the child can always benefit from a bit of attention and appropriate educational activities and things. That's the Heckman curve. The older the child, the more difficult it's going to be to turn that child around if they're not developing well because of poverty and deprivation. You need to start early. It's much easier, it's more sustainable. And then if a child arrives in a better condition at school, they'll do better at school, so it's self-fulfilling. You know, the teacher will think, oh, this child's interesting, this child's bright. You know what, there's quite a lot of information that if a teacher looks at a child and thinks, oh, they're poor, they come from a rotten family and things, they won't give that child the same attention. They won't have the same expectations. They won't demand the same behaviour. So if they come to school looking bright and perky and can answer a few questions, then that will motivate them on. Much less likely to drop out of school.